It begins with a single question that echoes through every heart that ever cared too much. Why do we ruin the very things that make us feel alive, even when we swear to protect them? A relationship, a dream, a planet, love can turn to ashes in the palms meant to hold it. There's a shadow that moves behind our devotion, whispering that destruction can feel like control. When we build something beautiful, a secret part of us trembles under its perfection, because perfection reminds us of what we are not, and the mind hates to feel small. So we sabotage, we mock, we test the strength of what was never meant to break. Psychologists call it the shadow, the unclaimed part of ourselves that we deny and fear. Carl Jung said that until we make the unconscious conscious, it will rule our lives as fate. Every act of destruction hides a plea for recognition. From the wounded self we keep unseen. Imagine standing before a mirror that shows not your face, but every impulse you buried. You'd see jealousy disguised as humor, fear dressed in ambition, pride pretending to be love. That mirror is the shadow, and the more you turn away, the more it steers your hands in secret. It's why the artist burns his masterpiece. The lover tests her partner. The nation devours its ideals. The impulse isn't madness. It's an ancient defense against unbearable vulnerability. Because to love deeply is to risk exposure, and the shadow despises exposure most of all. It waits for the moment your heart opens wide enough to let in joy, then pulls the fire alarm. Suddenly, you doubt, criticize, distance yourself, convinced it's self-preservation, not fear. But beneath that reaction is terror, the terror of losing what defines your worth. So destruction becomes a twisted form of self-protection, dressed as rational control. We think we're ending pain, but we're really ending connection before it can abandon us. It's the child who breaks the toy before someone else can take it away. The adult who ends a relationship first, to avoid being the one left behind. The species that drains the earth, unable to bear its dependence on her mercy. Love exposes us, and exposure feels like death to the ego that lives behind armor. That's why every act of love awakens its opposite, the instinct to destroy what feels too pure. It isn't evil, it's unfinished grief, longing for a safe place to reveal itself at last. Our task isn't to silence the shadow, but to meet it, name it, and invite it into the light. Only then can love survive its own intensity, transforming destruction into creation. Because the shadow doesn't vanish, it integrates, and in doing so, it becomes our power. The same force that once tore us apart can teach us how to hold what we love without fear. But that journey begins with the courage to ask, what part of me is still afraid to be whole? And when you face that question honestly, you'll see the shadow not as an enemy, but as a guide. A guide that leads you back through the wreckage of your own making toward the heart of compassion. Because what we destroy is never truly gone. It waits, quietly, to be rebuilt with awareness. That's where redemption lives, in the ruins we dared to create before we knew ourselves. And maybe that's the real reason we destroy what we love, so we can learn how to love it right. Somewhere deep in the psyche, the shadow begins to stir, restless after centuries of exile. It remembers every moment you silenced your rage, your desire, your doubt to appear good. Goodness became a costume, stitched together from fear of rejection and hunger for approval. But every mask has a cost, and the cost of this one is authenticity. The soul's native skin. When you deny your darkness long enough, it doesn't disappear. It reorganizes itself into rebellion. The parts you hide become architects of sabotage, designing failure to reclaim attention. That's why self-sabotage feels so personal, as if your own mind turned traitor overnight. It's not betrayal, it's communication, the shadow's way of saying, I exist and I matter too. Think of an artist painting a beautiful mural. then splashing black across it in frustration. The black isn't random. It's the unspoken emotion demanding to join the conversation. In every masterpiece, darkness defines the light. Contrast gives the image its power to move us. Yet in life, we try to erase contrast, to bleach our souls until only virtue remains visible. But a bleached soul can't breathe, and so it gasps through chaos, affairs, addiction, destruction. Destruction becomes expression, a wordless language for everything we were never allowed to feel. When the shadow takes the microphone, it doesn't whisper, it screams, because it's been muted too long. And the louder it screams, the more we project it onto others, pretending the monster lives out there. We see corruption, hypocrisy, cruelty, and we rage, unaware we are seeing our own reflection magnified. Collective shadows behave the same way as individual ones. They seek release through projection. It's why revolutions eat their children, why civilizations crumble under the weight of their ideals. The moral purity they enforce outwardly conceals the guilt and shame they cannot face within. To destroy what we love on a collective scale is to reenact the inner split of the human heart. Every war begins as a failure of introspection, a refusal to meet our own shadow with honesty. The shadow feeds on avoidance. It starves when met with attention and compassion. Attention disarms it, compassion transforms it, and integration makes it an ally instead of an enemy. Imagine what it would mean to build a world where the shadow is not exiled but educated, where children are taught that anger, envy, and fear are not sins but signals to understand, where art, therapy, and conversation become sanctuaries for the unspoken to breathe safely. Because when the shadow feels seen, it no longer needs to hijack your life to make itself known. It becomes creativity instead of destruction, empathy instead of projection, courage instead of fear. The very energy that once sought to burn everything down begins to build something enduring. You stop running from your contradictions and start composing symphonies out of them. That's how healing sounds, not like perfection, but like harmony between what was split apart. The paradox is that the more you embrace your flaws, the less power they have to define you. To love what you once feared in yourself is to reclaim your freedom from the cycle of ruin. It's not about conquering darkness. It's about learning to dance with it without losing the rhythm. And when you can hold that rhythm, you become the calm in your own storm, unafraid to feel it all. That is the moment the shadow stops being your saboteur and becomes your silent protector. It doesn't disappear. It evolves, guarding your depth, reminding you that light alone is too fragile. Without shadow, light blinds. Without light, shadow consumes. But together they reveal truth. And truth, once seen, can't be destroyed, because it carries both creation and destruction in balance. The shadow's revenge, in the end, is not punishment. It's revelation, demanding wholeness at last. The turning point comes quietly, not in triumph, but in the stillness after exhaustion. You've burned bridges, broken hearts, and realized that every ruin carried your own fingerprints. In that silence, when there's nothing left to protect, the truth finally has room to speak. It says, "You were never trying to destroy love. You were trying to survive its intensity." Love is not a gentle current. It's an earthquake, shaking loose every false foundation within. To truly love means allowing the collapse of the persona built to deserve it. The shadow trembles here, because this is where its story begins to rewrite itself. It once believed it had to destroy what was sacred to avoid being destroyed by rejection. But what if love was never the enemy? What if it was the mirror meant to reveal the shadow's pain? Every heartbreak, every failure, every self-inflicted wound becomes a map of misunderstood devotion. The shadow wasn't seeking vengeance. It was begging for reunion with the self that cast it away. This realization doesn't come as a flash of light. It comes as tears, soft and unstoppable. Because you understand at last that you weren't fighting darkness, you were fighting your own reflection. And the moment you stop fighting, something astonishing happens. You feel whole again. Wholeness doesn't mean purity. It means complexity accepted and integrated without shame. You begin to see the world differently, not as a battle between good and evil, but as a dialogue. Every flaw becomes a teacher, every contradiction a doorway into greater understanding. Love becomes less about possession and more about presence, less about perfection and more about truth. You realize that to love deeply is to accept that everything you cherish will change, and so will you. That awareness makes love fragile, but it also makes it holy, because it's rooted in honesty. Now, the shadow no longer lurks. It walks beside you, a quiet companion reminding you to stay real. It whispers, "Don't perform love, live it. Don't protect your image, protect your aliveness." With each choice to face discomfort instead of flee it, the cycle of destruction begins to unwind. You no longer need to tear things down to feel free. Freedom becomes the art of staying open. This is how individuals heal, but also how cultures evolve through shadow integration on a collective scale. Imagine governments guided by self-awareness instead of denial, economies built on empathy over fear. A society that understands its shadow would not need to destroy its environment to feel powerful. It would recognize that strength is not domination, but relationship. The ability to coexist with depth. When humanity meets its collective shadow, the age of punishment gives way to the age of accountability. Not the cold kind enforced by law, but the sacred kind born from recognition of shared wounds. Every system that fails, every leader that falls, is not just collapse, it's the psyche shedding illusion. Just as individuals must break to grow, civilizations must confront their shadows to evolve. The question is whether we will face it consciously or through yet another cycle of destruction. That choice will define the future more than any invention, ideology, or miracle cure. Because technology without self-awareness simply amplifies the shadow's reach. But consciousness with compassion transforms power into stewardship, creation into care. It's not utopia, it's maturity. The next stage of human evolution waiting in plain sight. The shadow's revenge, then, was never about retribution. It was about remembering who we are. It wanted us to feel enough pain to finally wake up to the truth of our interconnectedness. The truth that what we destroy within ourselves, and what we heal for all. And once that truth is seen, destruction loses its glamour, and creation regains its sacredness. This is the quiet revolution, where awareness replaces denial, and love becomes an act of courage. Redemption begins not with grand gestures, but with the smallest act of awareness. It's in the moment you pause before reacting, sensing the old impulse to destroy, and choosing stillness. That pause is sacred ground, the space where instinct transforms into insight and fear turns into wisdom. In that breath, the shadow is seen, not as a monster, but as a messenger delivering long-buried truth. The truth that every act of love is a mirror, and every mirror invites you to see more of yourself. We destroy what we love only when we mistake intensity for danger and vulnerability for weakness. But when we understand that love is meant to reveal, not to reassure, we stop running from its mirror. We stop trying to control love and begin to collaborate with it, allowing it to shape us honestly. That's the heart of integration, not perfection, but partnership between light and shadow within. You become both student and teacher of your own heart, learning to translate chaos into compassion. And compassion isn't soft. It's the strongest force on earth because it doesn't need to defend itself. When you act from compassion, the shadow loses its grip because there's nothing left to hide behind. You can look into another's pain without flinching, recognizing it as kin to your own. That recognition dissolves judgment and gives birth to empathy, the foundation of all repair. Repair doesn't mean restoring what was lost, it means building anew with the wisdom of what broke. A relationship once fractured becomes stronger when rebuilt with honesty instead of illusion. A community heals when it stops pretending perfection and starts embracing transparency. A planet renews when humanity remembers that care is not weakness, but survival's highest art. In this light, love becomes revolutionary, not romantic fantasy, but the architecture of resilience. It asks not for vows of forever, but for presence through the constant unfolding of change. To live this way is to let go of ownership and replace it with stewardship of self and of world. You tend to your own shadow as you would a garden, pruning, watering, and learning its seasons. And in that tending, the world outside begins to mirror your inner balance, slowly, faithfully. Because transformation is contagious. What you integrate in yourself ripples outward unseen. A society that learns to love its shadow becomes incapable of sustaining cruelty for long. Its art deepens, its politics soften, its future expands beyond the narrow cage of fear. This isn't naive optimism, it's psychology made visible on a planetary scale. The same law that governs the individual heart governs the collective one, integration or collapse. And though collapse still threatens, awareness grows faster now than ever before. People are learning that healing isn't a destination, but a practice repeated every day. To pause, to listen, to forgive, to rebuild. These are the quiet revolutions that rewrite destiny. And when the shadow sees it is finally welcome, it lays down its weapons and joins the circle. That circle is where humanity rediscovers its reflection, not as a threat, but as a shared identity. We realize that what connects us isn't our light, but the shadows we all carry in common. From that realization blooms a new kind of love, one mature enough to hold contradiction. A love that doesn't destroy what it fears, but befriends it, learns from it, grows through it. And perhaps that is what the shadow wanted all along, not revenge, but reunion with the light. To remind us that wholeness was never lost, only forgotten beneath the noise of our defenses. In the end, we don't conquer the shadow. We listen, we integrate, and we thank it for its lessons. Because everything we destroyed was simply trying to return us to ourselves, to love's original truth. That to be fully alive is to hold both creation and destruction, and choose creation every time. In the final reckoning, we stand before the ruins and realize they were never punishment but initiation. Every collapse stripped away a layer of illusion until only the essential self remained. The self that no longer performs for love but becomes love by its very presence. To reach this point is not to escape the shadow, but to see it illuminated from within. The same darkness that once terrified now feels intimate, like night surrounding a campfire. You understand that life was never about avoiding pain, but learning how to hold it with grace. Because pain held with awareness transforms into wisdom, and wisdom into quiet strength. That strength doesn't shout or conquer. It simply endures, luminous in its humility. Now you can love without needing to possess, give without demanding return, exist without armor. And in that vulnerability lies the greatest power, the ability to remain open even after loss. You no longer ask why we destroy what we love, because the answer has become embodied. We destroy when we forget who we are, and we create again when remembrance returns. Every act of healing is an act of remembering, stitching soul back into matter, light into form. The world too begins to remember, through art, through connection, through collective awakening. Cities scarred by conflict become canvases for peace. Forests once burned begin to breathe again. Each gesture of restoration whispers the same truth. The shadow has done its work and can rest. The revenge it sought was never to harm, but to reveal, to wake the sleeping heart of humanity. And now that heart begins to beat in rhythm with the earth again, steady, compassionate, alive. Love no longer feels like a risk. It feels like the natural state beneath all our defenses. We see that the impulse to destroy was simply the soul's way of crying out for reunion. And when reunion comes, creation flows effortlessly, as if it had been waiting for permission. Art flourishes, empathy deepens, science humbles itself before mystery instead of conquering it. The future no longer looks like progress alone, but balance between doing and being, wanting and enough. The shadow smiles now, no longer hidden, standing beside the light as its equal and its friend. It whispers one last lesson before fading back into silence. Wholeness is not perfection, but participation. To live fully is to dance with every part of yourself, even the ones that once frightened you. And in that dance, love ceases to be fragile, because it is no longer separate from truth. The cycle completes not with fireworks, but with understanding. A quiet dawn after a long night. You walk through the ruins and feel gratitude, because now you know they were necessary doors. Each one led you here, to this vast inner landscape where creation and destruction finally make peace. And as you breathe, you sense it, the collective heartbeat of a species ready to evolve beyond fear. Ready to build a world where love no longer needs to survive its own intensity, but thrives within it. This is not the end of the story, but the beginning of a wiser one, written by hands unafraid of their shadow. Because the shadow's revenge was never death, it was the birth of a love vast enough to hold everything. And that, at last, is why we destroy what we love, so that in rebuilding, we remember what love truly is. And so, the story settles into silence, the kind that follows revelation rather than ending. The camera drifts across faces, landscapes, memories, each one carrying the echo of awakening. You can almost feel the collective exhale, the release of centuries of denial and self-division. The light feels different now, not blinding, but gentle, wrapping the world in quiet acceptance. In that softness, humanity begins to see itself not as conqueror, but as caretaker of what remains. No longer obsessed with immortality, we learn to cherish the impermanence that makes life precious. Because love, we finally understand, was never meant to be preserved, only practiced in each moment. Practice becomes prayer, and prayer becomes action. Small, deliberate acts of wholeness repeated daily. A child plants a tree without thinking of legacy. An elder forgives the past without asking for applause. In those gestures, the shadow breathes contentedly, its purpose fulfilled through our gentleness. This is the peace that follows integration, not absence of conflict, but presence of understanding. The shadow still walks among us, but no longer as warning. It hums quietly, guiding our evolution. It reminds us that creation and destruction were never opposites, only partners in transformation. Every ending births a beginning, every fracture lets light through, every loss teaches new tenderness. And so the world continues, not redeemed by miracles, but by mindfulness, moment by moment. Each person who meets their own shadow helps steady the collective heartbeat of the human story. Every reconciliation within one heart sends ripples that calm the oceans of another. We begin to see that the fate of the world is written not in power, but in presence. Not in grand revolutions, but in the courage to face ourselves without turning away. The final frame lingers on that truth, the quiet triumph of being fully awake and still kind. Because this, at last, is what the shadow wanted us to remember before it vanished into light. That wholeness isn't found at the top of the mountain, but in the willingness to walk back down, to meet the world again, tender and unguarded, carrying both the fire and the ash as sacred. This is the new beginning, the age of integration, where destruction bows to creation as its teacher, where we no longer ask why we destroy what we love, because we've learned how to love what we once feared. And in that knowing, the story of humanity turns a page, its next chapter written in forgiveness. Forgiveness for what we've broken and for what we still will. For that too is part of becoming whole. The shadow's revenge is complete, not through pain, but through peace, returned to its rightful place. It smiles, dissolving into dawn, leaving behind the whisper that love was never lost, only waiting for us to be brave enough to hold both the darkness and the light and call them home.